Today I want to talk about the Berkey water filter. The Berkey is something that our family has used for almost 7 years now. We're really happy with it. I think when people start looking at water filters, there's things like Britas that we used to use a Brita, years and years ago. They're pretty popular. A lot of people have them in their fridge. When you look at something like a Berkey and you see the price tag, Berkey's most popular model is their Big Berkey, and it's $258. I think people kind of go, whoa, I don't think I needed that kind of water filter that badly. One of the things that we've used our Berkey for when we were traveling around, we were camping in national forest, and we had our Berkey with us the whole time, and we just made sure that we would camp near a river or a stream. Instead of lugging around bottled water, buying bottled water, dealing with plastic waste from that, we just used our Berkey. We'd scoop water out of whatever stream or river we were nearby, run it through our Berkey, and in several months of doing that, we never had a single issue with water. We weren't having to boil, we weren't using iodine tablets, we were just running it through our Berkey. A lot of people do store water in their home, and that's a phenomenal idea. It's a great thing to do. Everywhere we've ever lived, we've always been relatively close to some source of water, some kind of a stream or a lake, a pond. For us, though, we also always recognized that we had the option of, well, if we absolutely had to, we could just go down to the pond down the road and scoop some water out and throw it through the Berkey. I think when people look at water filters and they think, okay, that's great, that filter will work with that kind of dirty water, but that's a big price tag and it's just not what we need. They want to run their tap water through something, and so they're running it through like a Brita. And I think even if you're not looking at the Berkey or looking at a water filter in terms of really substantial purification, there's still a case to be made for the Berkey. When we were first looking at it, we've been using Brita filters and running tap water through them. And I think you can get a Brita filter on Amazon for like $26. And they've got, the replacement 3-pack for something like $15. There's, of course, the plastic waste issue. You're taking out that filter, tossing it, and putting a new one in at a pretty regular interval. Brita says for those filters, they last something like 2 months for the average family using 40 gallons. In our experience already using them, we realized that we knew we were having to change them more often than what Brita says. We go through conservatively 2 gallons a day. We have a 3-gallon model, and we have to fill it all the way up just about every single day. There's still some water in it sometimes, so conservatively, I would say we do 2 gallons a day. That 40 gallons that Brita says is average for 2 months, we do that in 20 days. At that interval, that 3-pack is lasting us 60 days, so 2 months. So we would need 6 of those 3-packs to make it through a year. That's like $90 a year. You can see when you compare that to the upfront cost of the Berkey at $258, now there's not quite such a big disparity. The Berkey just has that big upfront cost, whereas the Brita kind of slowly nickels and dimes you. I mentioned earlier, we've been using our Brita for almost 7 years. We haven't spent a penny on it in that time, other than the initial purchase price. We've kind of calculated based on our water usage that the filter should last us around 8 years, so we've got another year or so to go. Maybe it'll go longer. When it is time for us to replace those filters, the replacement Berkey filters are $107, and that should last us another roughly 8 years. Again, comparing that to something like the Brita, there's still that $90 a year ongoing for the entire time that you're ever using a Brita. So when you look at it that way, if we'd been using a Brita all this time, we would have actually spent way more money than we ever spent on our Berkey, and we could not have used a Brita in the way that we've been able to use a Berkey. Brita says they're running ordinary tap water through. So basically, hey, put clean water in and we'll filter it. Whereas Berkey, they're saying, non-potable, non-healthy water, you can run through it. From our experience, you can. Anybody who's looking at something like a Berkey and going, yeah, it's probably a pretty good filter, I get that, but I'm not spending that kind of money on a filter. Compared to other things, even way lesser standard filters, it's actually really inexpensive when you start breaking it down, because it's just that one initial big purchase, and then it's extremely cheap over its lifetime. And you get the added benefit of, it's not just filtering, it's purifying. You can run some seriously dirty stuff through this. When we were scooping river water out and dumping it in here, that was like green water with little wiggly things in there. The top chamber on this got gross, but the bottom chamber, crystal clear water every time. It's really a phenomenal purchase. I do have some complaints that I want to get into. And actually, complaints isn't really the right word. It's more of issues with usage style. If you have this sitting on your kitchen counter, which is what it does most of the time for us, it's phenomenal. I don't have a single complaint. It works. It's great. If you're using it in sort of a traveling setting, then There are some things that it would be awesome if Berkey could adjust about the stainless steel container. I doubt it'll ever come to anything. It's not like Berkey's paying attention to me. So I mentioned that the top chamber is going to get pretty dirty if you're running dirty water through it. It makes sense, right? The way the Berkey works is you've got this top chamber with the black filter elements inside, and it just gravity feeds through those filter elements into your lower chamber. Right now we're in a house running tap water through it, so it's pretty clean, but it's still surprising what starts to collect, even just running tap water through there. It kind of shows you that your tap water got a lot more in it than you realize. Berkey, they advertise the fact that when you want to kind of store it or put it away, this top chamber slides down into the lower chamber. I have some water in the bottom chamber, so I don't really want to pour it all the way in, but it goes all the way down to where you can see you kind of have this lip that sticks out. So it sits in there kind of like that. So it does make it a lot more compact. We were traveling around in a pickup truck. We had a camper cover on the back. We were going down dirt roads and things like that a lot. And even the inside back of the truck got absolutely filthy. One thing that would happen is our Berkey would get covered in dust. And this is the clean side. So when it's sitting in here like this, you kind of have what's supposed to be the clean side exposed. And these two spots here are where your clean water is coming out. And now you've got dust settling down inside there. One thing that I think would have been awesome is if there was some way for the lid to go on there and kind of stay. You know, I don't know if the lip was longer on the lid so that it could come all the way down to that, but basically a way to contain and close off this part so that when you are putting it away like this is staying clean. In your house, if you're gonna put it in the garage or something like that, it's not a big deal. You can bring it back in, wash it off. But when you're out on the road and you're just sort of going from one camp area to another camp area, you don't really have that luxury. The other issue is when you do this, and as I said earlier, if the inside of this is absolutely filthy, I mean, you can go rinse it out, but if the water you have to rinse it out with is dirty river water, well, you still have dirty, potentially contaminated water. And so now you're turning it upside down, and all of that dirtiness is going into your lower chamber that's your clean water. So what we would do when we get to another spot, that's the only time we boil water, is we'd scoop up whatever water we've got and boil it to make sure that anything that's in there is dead, and use that to clean out the bottom chamber. And at that point, at least anything that's left in there is sort of neutralized. Now with that cleaning process, then we can sort of start a new round of filtering through. And I don't know how Berkey could address that one. I mean, I think like the lid issue would be awesome if this lid was just longer, came down to here, and then fit on the underside when that's upside down. Flipping this inside of there, I don't see any way for them to have that not do that unless there was some kind of a plug you could put in there. But it's an issue, but it's not a big issue, and that was how we got around it. That's the only time we'd boil some water, use that to clean it out. So if you're at home and you're using the kitchen sink stretches over, or you've got a nice pitcher or something, pouring into the top is fine. If you miss for some reason, the water dribbles down and kind of hits this rim right there where the two of them go together. And especially with dirty water, when you spill because you're using a bucket or whatever else you happen to have, you didn't mean to, but your kids are right there and everything's going on, and it's just, oh, darn, I just dribbled some down the side. And now, let's say you had 2 gallons of clean water in there and you just dribbled dirty water down into it. And so it's kind of like, oh, do I say, okay, all that water is contaminated and we're just gonna toss it? Do I say, hey, it was such a small amount, I'm not gonna worry about it? But that's one thing that I don't like, is that it's too easy when you're pouring dirty water, and if you do spill, that it starts to go in that lip. Those are really the only things that I would change about the Berkey, or the only things to be aware of. Like I said, all in all, we absolutely love it. When you are running dirty water through it, it does get dirty, and that slows down the filtration process. When it does slow down, because your filters are clogged, you can just take something like steel wool or a Scotch-Brite pad or one of those, anything that's really abrasive, and take the filter elements out. The filter elements come out really easily. It's just the 2 nuts right there. You unscrew them, and then the filters just slide right out of there. And then you can just scrub them down. And that's part of how they last so long. When your filters get clogged, you just scrub all that gunk off the outside. I would do that just using river rocks, anything I found that wasn't too smooth, and just scrub, scrub, scrub. One of the things Berkey says is if you ever hit a point where after cleaning them, it still is filtering slowly, that's an indicator that you're kind of at the end of life of that filter and it's time to replace it. They say 3,000 gallons per filter element. So in our case, we have 2 in there. There's room to have 4 if you wanted 4. It'll filter faster. But for us with 2 in there, that's 6,000 gallons before those filters hit where Berkey says that they're at their end of life. And I think that's, though, highly dependent on the kind of water you're running through it. Because I think we're probably close to that, because I was saying conservatively 2 gallons a day. And so I think that would come out to something like 8-ish years at 2 gallons a day to hit 6,000 gallons. But our filters, anytime I clean them, they filter really quickly afterwards. But that's a nice aspect of those filters. You can take them out, you can scrub them down, put it back in, and keep going, because they do get clogged up. They absolutely, if you're doing something like river water through them. I was amazed how like slimy and gunky they got, which is just all the stuff that you're keeping out of the water and not putting into your body. So they're really great. We absolutely love our Berkey filter. If you're even remotely thinking about filters, definitely look into the Berkey. Steer clear of the things like Britas and all the plastic ones, because the Berkey is going to be way cheaper in the long run and way, way more effective. And if you're ever in a scenario where you don't have any option but to just grab whatever water you can find outside, you can throw it in the Berkey and have pretty good confidence that it's going to be just fine for drinking afterwards. So I hope that helps anybody who's thinking about a water filter and they're not sure what to do and they're a little scared off by the price tag of a Berkey. It's well worth it. It's cheaper in the long run. We absolutely love it, and I can't recommend it highly enough. I love you, Berkey.